Those of you who have yourselves book with you, we are starting with التكبير إذا الشمس كورت, and then we're going to be doing the two surahs that follows. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. It's a proper thing to do now. خير, حضرتك لو تبدأ بسورة التكوير من فضلك. اقرأوها مستمرة أولا ثم بعد ذلك آية بالآية، لكن السورة جميع البداية. أقرأه جميع السورة. نعم، جميع السورة. جميع السورة، هذه السورة فقط.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. إذا الشمس كورت وإذا النجوم انكدرت وإذا الجبال سيرت وإذا العشار عطلت وإذا الوحوش حشرت وإذا البحار سجرت وإذا النفوس زوجت وإذا الموءودة سئلت بأي ذنب قتلت وإذا الصحف نشرت وإذا السماء كشطت وإذا الجحيم سعرت وإذا الجنة أزلفت علمت نفس ما أحضرت فلا أقسم بالخنس الجوار الكنس والليل إذا عسعس والصبح إذا تنفس إنه لقول رسول كريم ذي قوة عند ذي العرش مكين مطاع ثم أمين وما صاحبكم بمجنون ولقد رآه بالأفق المبين وما هو على الغيب بضنين وما هو بقول شيطان رجيم فأين تذهبون إن هو إلا ذكر للعالمين لمن شاء منكم أن يستقيم وما تشاءون إلا أن يشاء الله رب العالمين. صدق الله.
Could you maybe want to tell us what page it is in?
In the Sel's book it is on page 45, sorry, page 48. Surah Takwir, it is on page 48. We don't have an Arabic version for it.
Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim.
In the name of God, the compassionate, the caring.
إذا الشمس كورت
when the sun is overturned,
وإذا النجوم انكدرت
and when the stars fall away,
وإذا الجبال سيرت
when the mountains are moved,
وإذا العشار عطلت
when the 10-month pregnant camels are abandoned,
وإذا الوحوش حشرت
and when the beasts of the wild are herded together,
وإذا البحار سجرت
and when the seas are boiled over,
وإذا النفوس زوجت
when the souls are coupled,
وإذا الموءودة سئلت
and when the girl child buried alive is asked,
بأي ذنب قتلت
what crime did you commit to deserve murder?
وإذا الصحف نشرت
And when the pages are laid open,
وإذا السماء كشطت
and the skies spread out,
وإذا الجحيم سعرت
when Jahim is set ablaze,
وإذا الجنة أزلفت
and when garden is drawn closer,
علمت نفس ما أحضرت
then a soul will know what it has sent ahead, what it has prepared.
فلا أقسم بالخنس
I swear by the stars that slide,
الجوار الكنس
streaming and sweeping along the sky,
والليل إذا عسعس
by the night as it slips away,
والصبح إذا تنفس
by the morning when the fragrant air breathes.
إنه لقول رسول كريم
This is indeed the words of a messenger ennobled,
ذي قوة عند ذي العرش مكين
empowered, ordained before the Lord of the throne,
مطاع ثم أمين
holding sway there, keeping trust.
وما صاحبكم بمجنون
Your companion, your friend hasn't gone mad.
ولقد رآه بالأفق المبين
He saw him on the horizon clear.
وما هو على الغيب بضنين
Nor does he hoard for himself the unseen.
وما هو بقول شيطان رجيم
This is not the word of a Satan struck with stones.
فأين تذهبون
Where are you going?
إن هو إلا ذكر للعالمين
This is a reminder to all beings.
لمن شاء منكم أن يستقيم
For those who wish to walk straight.
وما تشاءون إلا أن يشاء الله رب العالمين.
Your only will is the will of God, the Lord of all beings. Jazakallah. Jazakallah khair. Thanks to the party. Just before we go through the Celsus commentary on the text, you will have noticed the points that Celsus had made earlier on as for the rhyming of. One of you looks. Sorry, okay, let me not. I was just thinking. Celsus had dealt with the rhyming that we had spoken about last week. And you can see this pattern being repeated in this particular surah again, where it starts off with these abrupt consonants. إذا الشمس كورت وإذا النجوم انقدرت وإذا الجبال سجرت وإذا العشار عطلت حشرت سجرت زوجت سئلت قتلت نصرت كشطت سعرت أزلفت أهبرت. And then you have another pattern of rhyming that then appears. فلا أقسم بالخنس الجوار الكنس والليل إذا عسعس, and then coming phrase والليل إذا عسعس والصبح إذا تنفس. And then it comes to this pattern of the im and the un again. إنه لقول رسول كريم ذي قوة ذي العرش مكين مطاع ثم أمين وما صاحبكم بمجنون ولقد رآه بالأفق المبين وما هو على الغيب بضنين. And then it continues with the in or the in sound interspersed with the un sound until the end. And of course, when it is being read, especially if it is being read well, then it impacts us much clearer than what a translation does, although South is a relatively good translation. So that's the first thing that I want to say about this surah. Just saying something about Akhirah and Qiyamah. And next week I will speak a bit more about Akhirah and Qiyamah, and I will talk about traditional views on Qiyamah, as well as some of the more contemporary modernist approaches to. I'll speak about some of the traditional approaches and compare them to some of the more contemporary approaches to the ideas of Akhirah. But for today, I want us to concentrate as much as possible on these surahs. But before that, and so in Islam, there are basically 4 stages to the apocalypse or to the Akhirah. The one, in fact, precedes it, and those are known as, sometimes we speak about it as the isharat or the alamat, the signs of Qiyamah. And very many scholars have written that every single generation that have ever lived have thought that they were living through the last era. Now some of you will remember, I don't know it well, perhaps not, but I remember whenever anything new came about, then people would always say that this is a sign of Qiyamah. I particularly remember I've just read the book of the autobiography of Imam Abdul Rahman Basir. And one of the things that he was critiqued for was the organization that headed the mosque that he was the Imam at, the Masjid Burhanul Islam. They ran a fete, a mela or a festival or something, and they called it the mini fete. Based on the larger fete that was organized by the Muslim Assembly, one of the bigger organizations in Cape Town. And they were called in by the Ulama Council for naming their fete, the mini fete, because it was also the era of the mini skirts. And so they thought that this was a play on, kind of. But I do remember the time of the mini skirts that many elders around us thought that this was a sign of Akhirah, So generally throughout the ages, every Muslim generation have always felt that they're living in an era that Akhirah is near. Or that these are the signs of Akhirah. And of course, I mean, I'm not really into it, but sometimes you have this kind of literature that also describes, say, this is Dajjal, and that is Dajjal, or the Ya'juj and the Ma'juj, this is a sign, whether it is Israel, or different, conspiracy theorists. I'm not dismissing them very quickly, in case there are some in the room. But it features a lot in this kind of, so the signs of Qiyamah and so on, I'm looking for is now 666 or 777 or the various permutations of these numbers. But so, it starts off with the signs, and then there is the notion, the idea or the belief that all things will come to an end with the sounding of the trumpet by one of the malaika, the sur, and then there is the crossing of the sirat, and then there is hisab, sirat, the bridge, and then there is the hisab that will take place. And very often, and as I said in my very first lecture, that the contemporary mind tries to push back ideas of akhirah and kind of, is it concrete, isn't it concrete, and so on, and prefers to just avoid it all. But often, even living contemporaneously, perhaps when I was speaking about the contemporary mind, I was also kind of refining people or pigeonholing people. Because if you look, for example, in, say, Tablighi Jamaat circles, or in the traditional masjid, very often you will hear hadith being narrated that still puts a very vivid and a very real image to all of these signs in akhirah. I mean, they will tell you, you know, that if you do this, then you will get so much thawab, or you will be punished for such and such a long period if you miss one salah. And then they will say, and don't think that one day in akhirah is simply the equivalent of a day like this, but it is the equivalent of 100,000 years or something like that. And so sometimes you still find a very literal, a very literal understanding of all of this, and most believers actually feel quite comfortable with it, although people who engage more consciously with modernity still have difficulty translating all of this stuff. So you listen to this stuff in the mosque, and okay, fine, you know, you leave it behind you when you leave the mosque, and you kind of get on with your quote-unquote real life afterwards. So these are the four stages. The one is pre-qiyamah, and the other is, and then of course it is the beginning of hisab. As we see from this particular ayah in the Qur'an, and from several of the other late surahs, there is this cosmic unveiling. There is a reversal of everything that we know. Michael Sells on page 49. I'll just read through it quickly. The surah offers a cosmic unveiling. You have this inversion of all that we know to be reality, a complete distortion, a complete reversal of what we know. The sky, the seas, the mountain, the normal order of life are pulled away, and the deeper secret within is revealed. The English word apocalypse is derived from the Greek word for unveiling. In the overturning, at-takwir, one mark of the apocalypse will be the question addressed to the young girls who were buried alive. And then it goes on into it. I'll come back to that in a moment. The overturning, by placing the condemnation of this practice, femicide, the killing of the girl child, by placing the condemnation of femicide within the series of apocalyptic flashes, the overturning makes it the epitome of human wrongdoing. The recompense for such extreme evil is called Jahim, one of the several enigmatic terms the Qur'an uses in connection with the final reckoning. After 12 verses marking the overturning, the surah states that at that time each soul will know what it has prepared. By showing the temporality, the ephemerality of what seems secure, the verses on the cosmic unveiling attempt to reach that place within the self that is vulnerable before questions concerning ultimate value and reality. After a series of oaths, the surah refers back to the key verses of Surah 53, the vision seen at the furthest limit. Your friend has not gone mad. He saw him on the horizon clear. He does not hoard for himself the unseen. The word for mad, majnoon, literally means possessed by the jinn, who at the time of Muhammad were associated with amorous love, madness, and poetic inspiration. Thus the Quran is stating not only that Muhammad is not insane, but that he's not a poet inspired and possessed by jinn.
nor is he inspired by a Satan. Satans were considered a species of jinn, and the Qur'an refers to Satans or the Satan as sources of empty ideas and egoistic inclinations. As in Surah 53, the object of the vision is unspecified. If the pronoun were translated as him rather than it, the vision would refer to the angel Gabriel who brought to Muhammad the message of the Qur'an. The surah ends with a statement that it is a reminder to all beings and with the question, where are you going? This reminder occurs after the language of the surah has challenged established patterns of human endeavor and human aspiration. The cosmos itself has been presented as a kind of veil, and it is merely apparent solidity that has been shown at a moment when that veil is torn away. The night sky and the morning cool have been evoked as signs of a deeper reality. Only after this vision of cosmic unveiling and appeal to the signs of nature is the question about the direction of life itself posed. I just want to kind of just run through the surah again, okay, bearing in mind Salsa's comments. إِذَا الشَّمْسُ كُوِّرَتْ. And so the sun is overturned. وَإِذَا النُّجُومُ انْكَدَرَتْ. And the stars collapse, fall away. وَإِذَا الْجِبَالُ سُيِّرَتْ. And the mountains are moved. All of this, signs of stability. The mountain, you grow up with it. The stars, we always imagine that they are fixed and that they are in their places. Okay? And all of this is now turned completely upside down. وَإِذَا الْعِشَارُ عُطِّلَتْ. And when the 10-month-old camels are abandoned, unimagined. Pregnant camels, a source of great wealth and so on for the Arabs. وَإِذَا الْوُحُوشُ حُشِرَتْ. And when the wild beasts are pulled together and there is some kind of order among them, so when they are herded, they don't normally work in, or run or walk in herds. وَإِذَا الْبُحُورُ سُجِّرَتْ. And when the oceans boil over, normally it's a hot day, you get into the water to go and cool down. And now this very source of coolness, the opposite now takes place. وَإِذَا النُّفُوسُ زُوِّجَتْ. And when the souls are brought together or coupled, and it doesn't mean one soul with another necessarily, it also means that when you are coupled, or this is in some of the commentaries that I've read, it means that when you are coupled, when the souls are coupled with their deeds. And then in the middle of this, all of this, your known reality, your understanding of what stability is, normality, all of this gets inversed. You are thrown completely upside down. And in the middle of this, and one of the signs of this, but also an amazing connection again between akhirah and what you have done on this world, taking out a single one, the most vulnerable entity that there could possibly be, the child that has just been born. وَإِذَا الْمَوْءُودَةُ سُئِلَتْ. And when the girl child is asked, بِأَيِّ ذَنْبٍ قُتِلَتْ. For what crime were you killed? And now this, of course, dates to the time when there are different things for it. Some people, there is one account where it says that people feared, that they wouldn't be able to feed their kids. But generally it was connected to the patriarchy of Arab society and the disdain for the girl child that generally was seen as a burden, not a source of income, a problem to be married off as soon as possible. And if you have too many of them, it just adds to your woes. There are accounts that when people were pregnant and in the last stages of their pregnancy, especially if they've had girl childs before, or if they hadn't had a boy child before, then in the last stages of their pregnancy, they would go into the desert with their close family, and when the woman gives birth and it is a girl child, they would bury the girl child. There are also other accounts that it wasn't even the burying of the girl child wasn't something so contemptuous that it was only done quietly and secretly, and that there were in fact campaigners in Arabia, particularly in the city of Mecca, against this practice before the coming of the Prophet. In some of the tafsirs that I read, there were some of the names of some of these campaigners against femicide before the coming of the Prophet were in fact listed. And so in the middle of all of this, drawing one's attention to this very, very, the destruction of reality as you have understood reality, and telling you that there is another reality. Emblematic of your accountability in front of God is the most vulnerable entity, this girl child that has just been born, and in very poignant terms, وَإِذَا الْمَوْءُودَةُ سُئِلَتْ بِأَيِّ ذَنْبٍ قُتِلَتْ. For what crime is it that you have been killed? وَإِذَا الصُّحُفُ نُشِرَتْ, and when the pages are flayed open, وَإِذَا السَّمَاءُ كُشِطَتْ, and when the skies are flayed open, وَإِذَا الْجَحِيمُ سُعِّرَتْ, and when Jahim is set ablaze, وَإِذَا الْجَنَّةُ أُزْلِفَتْ, and when the garden is brought closer, then. Now, see how all these signs of nature, the apocalyptic vision, how it is fused with our concerns on earth and our lives on earth. عَلِمَتْ نَفْسٌ مَا أَخْضَرَتْ. Then a soul will know what it had sent ahead or what it brings with it. فَلَا أُقْسِمُ بِالْخُنَّسِ, taking an oath by the stars that glide, al-jawar al-kunnas, sweeping along, streaming, Celsus words, وَاللَّيْلِ إِذَا عَسْعَسْ, by the night, now the pairing again starts, وَاللَّيْلِ إِذَا عَسْعَسْ, by the night as it slips away, وَالصُّبْحِ إِذَا تَنَفَّسْ, and in the morning when it breathes, إِنَّهُ لَقَوْلُ رَسُولٍ كَرِيمٍ. Now, the Meccan surahs, sometimes directly, sometimes indirectly, also gives you an idea of the anguish that the Prophet ﷺ went through by being taunted and by being rejected. One gets the impression of a very human figure who does get hurt by all of these insults, who does get hurt, who feels vulnerable, who begins to ask himself, did this really happen to me? How is everybody against me, or so many people against me, if this? And then, one of the features of the Meccan surahs is that very many of them contain, I'm not sure if it's an Arabic word, in Urdu we speak about tasalli. Consolation. Yes, consolation. Consoling the Prophet ﷺ and reassuring him. And so here we have a few of those ayat coming up. إِنَّهُ لَقَوْلُ رَسُولٍ كَرِيمٍ, that this indeed, it is the word of a noble messenger. بِقُوَّةٍ, empowered, عِنْدَ ذِي الْعَرْشِ مَكِينٍ, empowered by the Lord of the throne, holding sway. Again, those were Celsus words. مُطَاعٍ ثَمَّ أَمِينٍ, keeping trust. And then وَمَا صَاحِبُكُمْ بِمَجْنُونَ, and your companion is not bereft of his senses. Your companion hasn't been possessed by the jinns. And it's interesting here that the Qur'an uses the word, this ayah is addressed to, in some ways, other believers, and it is addressed to the others in Makkah, to the kuffar in Makkah. But Muhammad is spoken about as sahibukum, your companion. And so the whole idea again of prophets emerging from their people, and prophets not being divine beings, that prophets are in some ways ordinary human beings. And I realize that I'm stepping into a huge controversy here about the nature of the Prophet. Maulana Fazlur Rahman Ansari many years ago had a very interesting analogy for it when he said that the Prophet is entirely human. The Prophet is entirely human. I'm now really stepping into it. The Prophet is entirely human in the same way that a diamond can be said to be entirely carbon. So you say that this is 100% carbon. So yes, it is, but it is not the same as carbon
That's cool.
as coal. Coal is also 100% carbon. So coal is also 100% carbon. So the
By
fact,
the way.
what's that?
I said it isn't, by the way.
It isn't?
Different. Use graphite's better on.
Oh, okay, sorry. There, put on my, there, sorry, Maulana Fazl Rahman Ansari came along 40 years ago. Okay, that's,
He wasn't a geologist.
and he wasn't a geologist. Okay, so he was winging his way. He was taking a chance, as I was trying to now, but I got caught up. Okay, and I'm not sure if I was about to say, but the point is, I'm not sure if the point still remains. The truth is that when we speak about the full humanity of the Prophet, it is contrasting it in relation to the absolute divinity of God. It is not contrasting it in relation to the humanity of other persons. The Prophet's humanity at some levels was the same as the humanity of my and your humanity. But to say that the Prophet is the equal of all human beings, that's something completely different. Anyway, it's interesting that the Qur'an here affirms the humanness of the Prophet by describing him as one of your companions. لَقَدْ رَآهُ بِالْأُفُقِ الْمُبِينِ The cells had gone into this now and how he translates it, if it is it or he saw him. He really saw him on the horizon clear, or he really saw it on the horizon clear. It could be his visions, or it could have been that he really saw the malaika on the horizon clear. وَمَا هُوَ عَلَى الْغَيْبِ بِضَنِينَ And he doesn't hoard, and interesting using the word hoard, as in the other Meccan surahs, hoarding is used in a very, very different context. He doesn't hoard the unseen for himself. وَمَا هُوَ بِقَوْلِ شَيْطَانِ الرَّجِيمِ And these words are not the words of the accursed, of the stone-struck shaitan. And then, right towards the end, comes in with an appeal to humankind again. So here you see the interplay between this, the cosmic unveiling at the end that will happen, a reminder of what Jahiliyyah was about and the accountability of humankind in Jahiliyyah through this act of femicide, the assurance of the Prophet, affirming the humanness of the Prophet, and affirming him and the veracity of his message on the one hand, and then towards the tail end of the ayah. And so I've told you all of this. I've told you how your solidity is going to, how all of what you've seen is an illusion. All of that you've depended on, your entire reality, it has now been turned upside down. فَأَيْنَ تَذْهَبُونَ And now, where are you going to go to? What are you planning on doing now? Now that you know both then, where will you go then? But also after telling you about all of this, أَيْنَ تَذْهَبُونَ Where are you going to go? What's your next move? إِنْ هُوَ إِلَّا ذِكْرٌ لِلْعَالَمِينَ Indeed, this is but a reminder to the universes. The notion of dhikr, a reminder that Sal had dealt with extensively in his earlier things, in the beginning, in his introduction. لِمَنْ شَاءَ مِنْكُمْ أَن يَسْتَقِيمَ Let those amongst you who so desires walk straight, walk firm, do the right thing. وَمَا تَشَاءُونَ إِلَّا أَن يَشَاءَ اللَّهُ رَبُّ الْعَالَمِينَ And you don't want إِلَّا أَن يَشَاءَ اللَّهُ رَبُّ الْعَالَمِينَ Your desires are not, ought not to be, except as is desired for you by the transcendent, by Allah, Rabbul Alameen, the sustainer, the nurturer of the universe. Okay. Let's. Sorry. Now, could I remind people that the point of one of our colleagues asked me yesterday, I don't see him here today, one of our participants last week, it was the first time that he had attended, he asked me, so what's the point of all of this? And as he asked me what's the point of all of this, it got me thinking about what's the point of all of this. I think it is to get people to reflect, it's to get people to think, not to think is entirely cerebral, I think it's more of a head thing. It's for people to kind of reflect, it's a bit of thinking with your heart, thinking with your mind, thinking with your other eyes, infusing this kind of thinking with listening. It is offering some kind of insights. Some of these insights are based on tafsir. Some of these insights are based on my readings of it and some preparatory work and so on that I do. But nothing that I say, not just here, anybody who's ever taken a class by me, nothing that I ever say will I claim to be the last word. It's simply not the way in which I reflect or think. I think it is, the last word is inconsistent with the idea of reflection. The very idea of reflection means to mull over. This is not a fatwa giving institution. You go to the ulama, you go to the fuqaha, you go to the mufassirun for final opinions on everything. I'm not into the business of final opinions. Besides, I think that the very final opinion is out of the realm of this world. It's one of the very nice things, about Islamic scholarly tradition. It always ends on Allahu A'lam. And it doesn't mean Allah knows the best. Allah knows better. So whatever you have, whatever you think, whatever argument, whatever you come up with, relax. Allahu A'lam. God knows better. So it's part of part of my own scholarly tradition, how I am really. A tentativeness, a eurism, standing back, okay, now you may say, oh, it's just another nice way of telling us he's a liberal. Doesn't have any right and wrong opinions himself. But let me hear some of your own reflections on this surah. Now, if not, yes.
Assalamu alaikum. My name is Ibrahim. This surah in particular, or the other Meccan surahs, when I go through them, I see the emphasis of Allah's power coming through, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala many times speaks about phenomena out in nature that is beyond the reach of man. And bearing in mind that the Qur'an came to address a society that had its elites that were intoxicated with power and at times would confront the Prophet ﷺ in a very arrogant and antagonistic manner. So from the beginning, even when we look at the very first ayah that were revealed, it speaks about insan and it speaks about istighna, and the rest, or that's basically istighna is people who think they are self-sufficient, that they can go on independent of a higher authority. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala speaks about that, and that's a theme that is almost constant throughout all of the early Meccan surahs. Even when Allah emphasizes the signs of the final day or the phenomenon in nature, He's emphasizing His power over and above the limited power of those who think they have that power.
Thank you.
Just to build on that, I also think it's just a reminder that this is just an illusion. This world, this dunya is just an illusion. We fall into the trappings of it. Things that seem stable, like mountains, the sun, the sky, the stars, the sky, and whether you are a nobleman or an ordinary person, there's no stability in that. It's an illusion. But what there is, what is final, what is something you can count on, is the akhirah, is the day of judgment. That is something that is, there's no question or doubt about it.
So if I may just add to it, along with those comments, it's also, these are confidence building ayah, because you have by and large oppressed and exploited people that were joining the Prophet ﷺ. And by Allah bringing in this theme in particular, He's growing the Muslims, or those who are interested in a divine message. And that's one of the things that also, I mean, they stick out in that time. And I might just indulge and say that these are things that should stick out in our time also, because by and large you have, many people who have broken psychologies, and sometimes, you need this type of emphasis to come through to say, okay, you are in overwhelming situations, you're going through a very tough time, but Allah is there with His power that is overwhelming.
We'll move on to the next surah. It is Surah 83, Al-Mutaffifin. It is on page 56 of your cell's book.
أولا السورة.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. ويل للمطففين الذين إذا اكتالوا على الناس يستوفون وإذا كالوهم أو وزنوهم يخسرون ألا يظن أولئك أنهم مبعوثون ليوم عظيم يوم يقوم الناس لرب العالمين كلا إن كتاب الفجار لفي سجين وما أدراك ما سجين كتاب مرقوم ويل يومئذ للمكذبين الذين يكذبون بيوم الدين وما يكذب به إلا كل معتد أثيم إذا تتلى عليه آياتنا قال أساطير الأولين كلا بل ران على قلوبهم ما كانوا يكسبون كلا إنهم عن ربهم يومئذ لمحجوبون ثم إنهم لصالو الجحيم ثم يقال هذا الذي كنتم به تكذبون كلا إن كتاب الأبرار لفي عليين وما أدراك ما عليون كتاب مرقوم يشهده المقربون إن الأبرار لفي نعيم على الأرائك ينظرون تعرف في وجوههم نضرة النعيم يسقون من رحيق مختوم ختامه مسك وفي ذلك فليتنافس المتنافسون ومزاجه من تسنيم عينا يشرب بها المقربون إن الذين أجرموا كانوا من الذين آمنوا يضحكون وإذا مروا بهم يتغامزون وإذا انقلبوا إلى أهلهم انقلبوا فكهين.
صدق الله. المرة الثانية الآية
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم ويل للمطففين
Cursed are the cheats
الذين إذا اكتالوا على الناس يستوفون
who when their portion is measured among people they take their full share.
وإذا كالوهم أو وزنوهم يخسرون
Who when they measure the share of others are frauds.
ألا يظن أولئك أنهم مبعوثون
Do they think that they will not be raised again
ليوم عظيم
for a momentous day?
يوم يقوم الناس لرب العالمين
On a day when humankind will stand before the Lord of all beings.
كلا إن كتاب الفجار لفي سجين
But no, the book of the false-hearted is in Sijjin.
وما أدراك ما سجين
What can tell you of Sijjin?
كتاب مرقوم
A book inscribed.
ويل يومئذ للمكذبين
Cursed are those who call it a lie,
الذين يكذبون بيوم الدين
those who deny the day of reckoning.
وما يكذب به إلا كل معتد أثيم
Who would deny it but the hardened aggressor?
إذا تتلى عليه آياتنا قال أساطير الأولين
When our signs are recited to him, he says, fables of the ancients.
كلا بل ران على قلوبهم ما كانوا يكسبون
But no, rather, It is rust on their hearts. Rust on their hearts is what they acquire.
كلا إنهم عن ربهم يومئذ لمحجوبون
On that day, they will be veiled from their Lord.
ثم إنهم لصال الجحيم
And they will burn in Jahim.
ثم يقال هذا الذي كنتم به تكذبون
Then it will be said, this is that which you had denied or belied.
كلا إن كتاب الأبرار لفي عليين
But no, the innocent will be in Illiyin.
وما أدراك ما عليون
And what will convey unto you what Illiyun is?
كتاب مرقوم
A book inscribed,
يشهده المقربون
witnessed by those who are brought near.
إن الأبرار لفي نعيم
Oh, the pure of heart will rejoice
على الأرائك ينظرون
on the raised couches gazing.
تعرف في وجوههم نضرة النعيم
On their faces see the radiance of joy.
يسقون من رحيق مختوم
They will be given to drink a sealed,
ختامه مسك
its seal is musk.
وفي ذلك فليتنافس المتنافسون
For that let those aspire.
ومزاجه من تسنيم
Blended with the water of tasneem.
عينا يشرب بها المقربون
From that spring only those brought close will drink.
إن الذين أجرموا كانوا من الذين آمنوا يضحكون
The abuses would laugh at those who kept the faith.
وإذا مروا بهم يتغامزون
Winking to one another as they passed by.
وإذا انقلبوا إلى أهلهم انقلبوا فكهين
When they returned to their people, they returned mocking.
وإذا رأوهم قالوا إن هؤلاء لضالون
And when they saw them, they said, those people have gone astray.
وما أرسلوا عليهم حافظين
And they were not appointed their keepers.
فاليوم الذين آمنوا من الكفار يضحكون
But on that day, those who kept the faith at those who denied it will laugh.
على الأرائك ينظرون
On couches gazing.
هل ثوب الكفار ما كانوا يفعلون
Were the deniers rewarded for what they achieved? Sadaqallah. I'll just read through the Sal's text before I make a brief comment. Rather than an evocation of the day of reckoning, the cheats envisage the ultimate destiny. This is the name of the surah, Mutaffifin. Al-Mutaffifun envisage the ultimate destiny of those who spend their lives cheating and hoarding, and those who are giving and accept the reality of the reckoning. The descriptions are consonant or consistent with the world of 7th century Bedouin Arabia. The punishment is fixed as Jahim, a term that means fire or raging fire that was developed by later commentaries and integrated into elaborate visions of hell that circulated the Mediterranean world in late antiquity. But in the Qur'an, the discussions of afterlife tend to be brief, often with rare terms such as Jahim, because it is within the context of other proper names such as Illiyin that and this is self speaking, that I've treated the word Jahim as a proper name as well. Much of the effect of the early Meccan surahs is due to what is not said, to the way in which a promise or a warning is given, but not fixed into a temporally or spatially located heaven or hell. The result is an openness as to what the warning or promise actually means. An openness that invites hearer or reader to meditate upon that moment in which his or her life, in its true perspective of acts of justice or injustice, generosity or meanness, is unfolded. The promised reward is located in Illiyin. The phrase, وَمَا أَدْرَاكَ مَا عِلِّيُّونَ, and what will tell you of Illiyin, immediately marks the word as one that would have been mysterious to the original audience. The description is one of the royal banquet. In Bedouin Arabia, people sat, and still sit, on cushions on the ground. Thus, the raised couch was associated with the august splendor of the Roman feast. Descriptions of great wines were also common in pre-Islamic poetry, and many pre-Islamic poems became famous for their depictions of rare wines imported from distant places of ancient vintage. The Qur'an, which in later passages bans wine, was to make of the heavenly wine mixed with the purest spring water, an image of unbearable beauty to the desert inhabitant, a key symbol of the paradise to come. The end of the surah shows the bitterness between the young Muslim community, at first mocked and humiliated, then persecuted, and those in Mecca who rejected the messenger Muhammad and laughed at his message. As with many of the gospel parables of Jesus, the rejection of the message is met not with a command to fight back, but with a warning that in the final moment it will be the mockers who will be mocked and the persecutors who will feel the pain. Let me pause there for a moment and share two very contrasting issues with you. And I don't know how to share this with you because it genuinely isn't, it's genuinely meant to just share. Wallahi al-Azim, I do not mean to boast or to لا أريد أن أزكي نفسي. I don't want to kind of give myself a nice kind of air or polish all these things. But you know, I find these sessions exhausting. I find it absolutely exhausting because of my own personal response to the Qur'an. When the Qur'an is being read, I become completely incapacitated. I can't think, I can't talk, I can't concentrate on anything else. I, for example, will never turn the Qur'an on in the car because then I can't concentrate on driving. I can't drive and listen to the Qur'an at the same time. I can't have the Qur'an on ever as background music and other people talking in the background. My neighbor sometimes has, please don't tell my neighbor if anybody knows who my neighbor is. My neighbor, and I'm not sure which neighbor it is, but one of the neighbors in the building sometimes has the Qur'an on in Ramadan. And I can't sleep. I find, not in the negative way, but I find the Qur'an deeply haunting, deeply destabilizing. You know, this verse in the Qur'an, that when the Qur'an is being read unto them, they tremble. I don't think I have many of the other qualities. I mean, I can tell you about a couple of thousand ayat where, oh gosh, I'm not the one that's described there, you know. So, but this one, you know, about trembling when the Qur'an is being read. And so, when the Qari reads, I try to stick as close as possible to the translation because else I will get lost. But then I also struggle to think through, what am I going to say about this verse, what am I going, and then I just get this huge headache because I can't balance different things when the Qur'an is being read. And normally I just listen to the Qur'an. I'm not even an intellectual, I'm not even a scholar of the Qur'an, I'm nothing when the Qur'an is being read. Nothing. And so, but in these sessions I'm supposed to be a bit of a translator, I'm supposed to be a bit of a scholar, I'm supposed to be a bit of a commentator, and I find it exhausting, unbearably exhausting. So that's the one little thing that I wanted to share with you, the one on a heavy note. On a lighter note, Iqbal, the first ayah of the Quran, the first ayah of the surah, the first 2-3 ayah, وَيْلٌ لِلْمُطَفِّفِينَ, woe, cursed are the cheats, الَّذِينَ إِذَا اكْتَالُوا عَلَى النَّاسِ يَسْتَوْفُونَ, when they must take measurement from people, or when their portion is being measured out, they take the full share. But when they have to give the share of other people, they cheat them. So yesterday, many of us may have been at the demonstration in Santon, in support of the Palestinians, and in support of the demand that the Israeli ambassador must be expelled. So the traffic was very heavy after the march, very, very heavy, and there were many people who decided to hang out in Santon rather, and break the iftar and then leave after Maghrib and after they've eaten. So you saw all of these people in something fishy, Nando's, you saw all these Palestinian scarves and so on. So we went to the Musalla in Santon to break our iftar. And these two guests of mine, who are staying at my place, they fell asleep in the Musalla. And then I kind of, a bit of a parent figure, think ahead. Okay, so we're going to break our fast in the mosque. We're going to get probably some dates or something. But we bought some samosas also. So we went to the Musalla and then left the stuff there. The two of them fell asleep. And then I, thinking further ahead, thought, okay, after Maghrib Salah, we're going to go to a restaurant and wait for our food. And in this waiting for our food, it's kind of a very trying moment when you're standing in the queue, what if it's, and then it takes long and so on. So I bought 3 pieces of nougat. The one had berries and almonds, the other one had ginger and almonds, and the other one had macadamia. So I had it in my pocket. My pocket was like bulging with these 3 fairly large sticks of nougat. So we went to mosque. Here with the dates, here with the samosas and so on. So we were happily eating from what other people had produced. But I wasn't going to take out what I had in my pocket to share with other people. So I told Iqbal, look, I've got something in my pocket. I've got something in my pocket for the 3 of us. But bloody hell, I'm not going to take it out now and share with all these other people. And I said this in front of 2 other kids, two, I think, Hips boys who were these things. And they overheard me saying they found this hilarious and they just burst out laughing. But this is how we are. When it comes to us and what is ours, we hold on. We hold on. And when it comes to what we can get from other people, we take everything. So Iqbal, next time, please, don't hide the nougat in your pocket. Take it out and share it with other people. Remember, يُؤْثِرُونَ عَلَىٰ أَنفُسِهِمْ وَلَوْ كَانَ بِهِمْ خَصَاصَةٌ. The Sahaba, they preferred others above themselves, though poverty became their lot. They preferred others above themselves, though poverty became their lot. People, I promise not to go off into a long storytelling tone, but this next one is kind of irresistible. So we were in the Tablighi Jamaat. I spent a lot of my childhood in the Jamaat. And this story about the companions of the Prophet ﷺ, who often, there's a story, you find it in stories of Sahaba, where a neighbor came to visit or a hungry person came to visit, and there was nothing to eat, and then the parents flipped the candle out and in darkness, and then they pretended to eat, and the guests ate the food, all the food in front, and they pretended to eat. And it was upon this, some of the ulama say this is the sabab al-nuzul, the cause of the revelation of this ayah. وَيُؤْثِرُونَ عَلَى أَنفُسِهِمْ يُؤْثِرُونَ عَلَى أَنفُسِهِمْ وَلَوْ كَانَ بِهِمْ خَصَاصَةٌ. They preferred others above themselves, though poverty became their lot. So I don't remember what preceded what now, but we were in Jamaat and we were in Lodium. We were still kids, so we were in Lodium, and then somebody brought a half a watermelon. People often bring stuff to the Jamaat when the Jamaat is in mosque. Somebody brought a half a watermelon, and it was just myself, and I don't know if you'll be embarrassed to find this funny. Maulana Nazim Hante was a kid at that time. Well, both of us were kids at that time, but the rest of the Jamaat were asleep. So we decided to finish this half a watermelon between the two of us. Then, but unfortunately later they discovered the, what do you call it? The shell. They discovered the shell of the watermelon, and then the Amir wanted to know, and then we owned up. And the Amir said, Astaghfirullah, the Sahabas preferred others above themselves, though poverty became their lot. You guys prefer others above themselves after you've had your lot. The next day in the same mosque, somebody brought a jug of faluda. And again, myself and Nazim again finished the whole jug of faluda before any... I don't know if any of you spend time in the Jamaat, but when the elder guys go and sleep, in the afternoon especially, the kids are still energetic and running around and want to play and so on and get up to lots of mischief. You're out in Jamaat, it's okay, pak for wasfah, let it go, darguzar karo. So we finished the whole jug of faluda. Unfortunately, the jug wasn't the Jamaat's. The jug had to be fetched, the jug had to be collected. So we tried to keep an eye open at Salah time for the person who was coming to get the jug. Not successfully, because it ended up by the Amir asking about this jug. What's the jug about and so on. And again we got caught out, at which our Amir said, Astaghfirullah, the Sahabas preferred others above themselves, though poverty became their lot. You guys prefer others above themselves after you've had the whole lot. Anyway, my Jamaat stories.
Between that and those 3 items in your pocket, not much has changed.
Iqbal, I hope that on the day of Qiyamah, Allah will do.
You'll forgive me.
I hope that on the day of Qiyamah, Allah will do a better job of obscuring my sins than what you are doing of mine at the moment. I hope he does a better job of obscuring your sins. I hope he does a better job of obscuring your faults as you're doing, and really zooming in mine at the moment. Hey. But really, this is life. Really, this is life. I had an argument, yes, it was a bit of an argument with my colleague, Dr. Mati, a few months ago. So I apologized for something that I had done. So he said, I'm not interested in your apology. Every time you mess up and then you just want to apologize afterwards. You've done this time and time again, your apologies have no distinct. So I said, look, Shahid, if God is going to have this attitude towards me and you, where will we get in life? Time and time again, and you go and you do the same thing. Sorry. Okay. Now, if we can get back to this surah. Again, connecting simple acts of both giving, of selfishness, selflessness, of justice and injustice, and the selfishness at the heart of it all. It's very interesting what I find in this, in the first few ayat. It's connecting the self-interest, selfishness, to injustice, telling us that when we are just obsessed with our own needs and our own desires, it is then, hey Shahid, did you just arrive? Shahid, come, when did you arrive? هذه اللمحة متى وصلت؟
بالدقيقة.
Okay. Alhamdulillah. What is very interesting in this ayah is how self-interest, self-absorption, narcissism, how that is connected to the propensity to commit injustice. I promise not to go off the topic, but it is what we are seeing in Israel at the moment. The selfishness, the self-absorption, the whole idea that God had entered into an oath with us to give us a specific piece of land, regardless of the consequences that this has for other people. It's me and my needs. And so, in fact, it is a kind of shirk, where the self is equated with God, where my desires is equated with God's will. It is a kind of shirk. But in this ayah particularly we see how injustice is connected to an inability to see the other person. One of the really nice things, I shared this with the guys who are staying with me at the moment. One of the really nice things, that I learned in the Jamaat, when you eat, you must always eat with the intention that others sitting around, you must eat more than what you are eating. And in this way, they say, there will be enough food for all. So this idea of putting others, يؤثرون على أنفسهم, to prefer others above themselves. And then connecting justice and injustice, the denial of the rights of others, not looking out for others again, to the idea of the rejectors, and then وَيْلٌ يَوْمَئِذٍ لِلْمُكَذِّبِينَ, curse on that day to those who have rejected. This word وَيْلٌ لِلْمُطَفِّفِينَ in the beginning, it again underlines a point that I had made very early on, the antithesis of liberal notions, that there is space for everything, and that everybody and everything should be embraced. I've often said this, I said this before, this is a profoundly, not only un-Quranic, but an anti-Quranic position. The Quran doesn't flinch at cursing. The Quran doesn't flinch at saying, get lost. The Quran doesn't flinch at saying that there is a Jannah and that there is a Jahannam, that there is a good and there is a bad. People, this is very, it's very challenging for many of us who all around us are called upon to make nice noises, to say peace, and when Islam is being depicted as a religion that doesn't want to be peaceful, a religion of war, a religion of antagonism. If you may again allow a slight departure from me, the ceasefires, the supposed ceasefire that started off in the beginning of the week. So here the Egyptians come along with a proposal. An Egyptian government that is not recognized by the African Union, an Egyptian government that is just on the cusp of international recognition. And also, for their own purposes that they have recognized this Egyptian regime, no credibility whatsoever, comes up with a proposal that the Israelis immediately agreed to. Okay? So you can also imagine if it's anything that comes from this government, and the fact that the Israelis immediately agreed to it, the fact that it comes from them in the first place means, habitat, there's nothing good can come from there. It is accepted by that from which nothing good can come. Hamas hears about it in the media, reads about it, like all of us. What's this? No, sorry, we weren't. Hamas breaks ceasefire. In the media, it's not even a ceasefire proposal. It's a ceasefire. Nobody had agreed to a ceasefire, but the media depicts it as Hamas breaks ceasefire agreement. So, at a time, when the Muslim world has to contend with so much, the desire on the part of nice and decent Muslims is often, gosh man, okay, ceasefire. There was a ceasefire proposal which we didn't jump at, and you made us look so bad. How can we then not at least make noises about peace? And so the temptation in our age is so great to make noises about peace. Not the question about real peace. Real peace, I think I was about to say any decent Muslim, but real peace, peace based on justice and so on, this is not, this is, Wallahu yad'u ila dar salam. God calls you to an abode of peace. And so it's not, as if Islam is by its nature just moves, and when they turn towards you in reconciliation, turn towards them. It's not. But the temptation is very great in our time. When we live contemporaneously, when we want to live inside our time, to also play the role of dead Muslim. That you can walk over me, I'm going to play dead. And this is, whatever you may want to call yourself, this is clearly not the Quranic vision of what life or peace or Muslims are all about. I had a couple of other comments to make, but I had now gotten sidetracked. I think the reality is that that the war in Gaza rests very heavily on me, and so it's very difficult to take it very far off from my distance. Just one or two comments. This on. Are there any insights into this particular surah that some of you would like to offer? I have a comment here from Muhammad Asad on this khitamuhu misk, but I'll come to that in a moment. Now, has my exhaustion impacted on you? Yes.
I just thought that Assalamu alaikum. I just thought that considering our discussion last week when we looked at our social responsibility, that it's interesting to look at this idea of how cheating is condemned in the Qur'an, and how prevalent we find it in our society today. And I just thought that it was an interesting sort of tying into that whole idea of, we have that social responsibility to uphold, and in a way maybe we need to, as citizens, challenge these notions, and when we see cheating taking place and corruption taking place, then I don't know, that's just something on my mind.
Thank you very much. I mean, one of the things that I find really curious, is how is it that corruption and cheating, I mean, it is just so common, so ordinary amongst us. You don't become financially successful except through, how is it so common and so, and you hardly hear, I don't know, I mean, perhaps I don't hear too many, I'm one of those people who try to make a point of arriving at the mosque just in time for Salah. So in that way I'm did somebody fart? No? Okay, sorry, oops, I shouldn't be drawing attention. If somebody did, I'm sorry, I should just be ignoring it. My apologies. How can I draw attention to it? This is very bad. I sometimes make a point of getting to mosque just before the salah for Jumu'ah and not go in time for the talk. Because if I've gone for salah, then alhamdulillah, I would probably have listened to a very good piece of qira'at. I would have fulfilled my fard, my obligation, and I would feel good for the day. But if I go and listen to the talk, there's a very good chance that I'll come feeling kind of really crabby and feeling embarrassed and awkward and angry at the imam or something. So I try to make a point of arriving at the mosque just before. But the few times that I have heard talks in mosques, it's been a long time since I've heard references to economic crimes. There is occasionally talks about the corruption of government and the corruption of government. You will hear talks about or reference to government corruption. But our own kind of participation in economic crimes of whether it is exploitation, whether it is how we pay our domestic workers or don't pay our domestic workers, or the business practices and so on. In the media a few days ago, a very prominent businessman, Muslim businessman, there was, please no names, was seen, owing I don't know how many millions or billions possibly to SARS. Of course, nobody is guilty until proven. So, but it's fairly endemic, and it's amazing in the light of what we say, is our texts, and our texts is the Qur'an's harshness on economic crimes, how low it features on the radar of Muslims. So thanks for your comment. Is there anybody else that would like to say something about this surah? Okay, then we'll move. Just a comment on this khitamuhu misk, the end which is misk, and the question of alcohol, something that I picked up from Muhammad Asad's commentary. This, he translates it as the end whereof will be misk. And he says, my rendering of this phrase reflects the interpretation given by several authorities of the second generation of Islam and by Abu Ubaidah ibn Muthanna, all of them quoted by Razi. The pure wine, rahiq, of the year after, which contrary to the wine of this world, will carry the seal, i.e. the sanction of God, because no headiness will be in it, and they will not get drunk thereon, is another symbol of paradise, alluding by means of comparison with sensations that can be experienced by human beings to the otherworldly sensations of joy, which in a form intensified beyond all human imagination are in store for the righteous. Some of the great mystics, such as Jalaluddin Rumi, see that in that pure wine an allusion to a spiritual vision of God. And then Muhammad Asad says, this is an interpretation which I believe is fully justified by the sequence, yani the sequence of this ayah in relation to what follows. Okay, we'll move on to the last surah, and I'm not going to be offering much commentary on it, and I will just read the Saul's text afterwards. نعم إذا السماء انشقت. And it is on page 60 in your Saul's text.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم إذا السماء انشقت وأذنت لربها وحقت وإذا الأرض مدت وألقت ما فيها وتخلت وأذنت لربها وحقت يا أيها الإنسان إنك كادح إلى ربك كدحا فملاقيه فأما من أوتي كتابه بيمينه فسوف يحاسب حسابا يسيرا وينقلب إلى أهله مسرورا وأما من أوتي كتابه وراء ظهره فسوف يدعو ثبورا ويصلى سعيرا إنه كان في أهله مسرورا إنه ظن أن لن يحور بلى إن ربه كان به بصيرا فلا أقسم بالشفق والليل وما وسق والقمر إذا اتسق لتركبن طبقا عن طبق فما لهم لا يؤمنون وإذا قرئ عليهم القرآن لا يسجدون بل الذين كفروا يكذبون والله أعلم بما يوعون فبشرهم بعذاب أليم إلا الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات لهم أجر غير ممنون. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم.
In the name of God, the compassionate, the caring.
إذا السماء انشقت
When the heaven splits.
وأذنت لربها وحقت
Attentive to the Lord and made true.
وإذا الأرض مدت
When the earth is unfolded.
وألقت ما فيها وتخلت
And pours forth what is in it and is emptied.
وأذنت لربها وحقت
Attentive to the Lord and made true.
يا أيها الإنسان إنك كادح إلى ربك كدحا
O human
فملاقيه
being, towards your Lord you are toiling. Weary, you will find him.
فأما من أوتي كتابه بيمينه
Whoever is given the book on his right,
فسوف يحاسب حسابا يسيرا
will be given an easy accounting,
وينقلب إلى أهله مسرورا
returning to his people in joy.
وأما من أوتي كتابه وراء ظهره
Whoever is given the book behind his back
فسوف يدعو ثبورا
will call out destruction
ويصلى سعيرا
and will be swallowed in fire.
إنه كان في أهله مسرورا
He was the one happy among his friends.
إنه ظن أن لن يحور
Thinking he would always be.
بلى إن ربه كان به بصيرا
But no, rather his Lord could see into him.
فلا أقسم بالشفق
I swear by the glow of sunset,
والليل وما وسق
by the night and what it enfolds,
والقمر إذا اتسق
by the moon when she is full.
لتركبن طبقا عن طبق
Horizon on horizon you will rise.
فما لهم لا يؤمنون
And what is it with them that they do not believe?
وإذا قرئ عليهم القرآن لا يسجدون
And when the Qur'an is recited to them, they do not touch their heads to the ground in prayer.
بل الذين كفروا يكذبون
But no, the rejectors call it a lie.
والله أعلم بما يوعون
God knows what they hide.
فبشرهم بعذاب أليم
Bring them good news of a punishing pain.
إلا الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات لهم أجر غير ممنون
Except those who keep the faith and work justice. Theirs is a recompense unending. May I remind you that this surah had a verse that was one of the sajda verses, one of the prostration verses. So at the first available opportunity, fulfill your responsibilities. Jazakallah khair, thank you very much for coming. I look forward to seeing all of you next week. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.